Hi everyone, welcome to the 51st edition of the Startup Rounder Operator, where I'm me and we're joined by the person you can see on your screen. Hi Roshan, been a while that you've actually caught up. How have you been?
I've been well. It's glad that you can make time for all of this, amidst all of the vacations that you've been taking, Gunjan.
Well, it's not only me, I guess the entire Startup Operator team was, taking some much needed break. And yeah, I
Yeah,
guess,
it's been a long time since we've had a break for a week, right? I don't think we put out
yeah.
an episode in the last 7 or 8 days. So I think Gunjan, Thiru, and myself, all of us have been, in and out of offices, in and out of our homes itself. So that is why you haven't heard from us, but we have more than a couple of episodes coming up next week, and that should be amazing.
Right, and we'll get right into that. But before that, we have seen some amazing developments take place in the month of December, right? The final month of the year, we are seeing no signs of slowdown in the, investment space or anything. So really excited to discuss the news with you. But I think the highlight of the previous week was Enter India setting up a dedicated fund to put in money into startups that are following Web 3.2 and other blockchain initiatives. Antler had entered the Indian markets earlier this year with investments in companies such as Humit, CodeDam, and Peak Performer. And they're setting up a fund to deploy 100 to $150 million to fund more than 100 Indian startups over the next 3 years. It will dedicate up to a third of this capital planned in India towards backing Web 3.0 and blockchain projects by funding 25 to 30 startups in the space. Antler has also been actively expanding its Web3 portfolio with the belief that the world is now ready for 1,000 new founders to jump in and create a decentralized Web3 that will emerge within the next 4 or 5 years. Now, I know earlier in the podcast we have spoken how India will become one of the largest markets for blockchain and its various use cases, right? But do you see there are some potential roadblocks to this kind of growth, or are there any real use cases for a market such as India?
See, blockchain is a very fundamental innovation, and I can see plenty of use cases in India. It's just that we've been blinded by all of the cryptocurrency hype, right? And we're not able to see beyond it. But otherwise, I mean, I can see a whole spectrum of use cases for this, right? From land title registry to vehicle registration, farm insurance, health records, and so on and so forth. And the advantage that we have in India is that we have an amazing public tech stack, right? I mean, you think of Aadhaar, UPI, eSign, DigiLocker, and GSTN, the PMJ, for example. Now, all of these are public infrastructure that private applications can leverage and build on top of, right? And these can solve very, very fundamental problems. I mean, you talk about the fact that there are so many cases backlog held up in the courts, right? I mean, a bunch of them, a good percentage of them are all land disputes. 25-30% would be land disputes, and these have no reason to exist. I mean, with something like blockchain we can solve these almost instantly, I would say, right? Then you talk about ease of doing business, and how many hoops that an entrepreneur has to jump through for registrations and certifications and regulations and so on and so forth. All of these can again exist on the blockchain. So what all of this will enable is greater transparency, decentralization, and accountability, right? Which is again very, very fundamental requirements to keep things very smooth and running easily. So, I mean, I think this is a very smart move. I feel the Web3 ecosystem in India is heating up. We've seen a lot of activity on Solana, for example. Polygon, of course, is founded by Indian founders, and so I think Antler is absolutely on the money in terms of having a fund and resources for this particular space.
Yeah, also public interest towards whole blockchain and Web 3.0 has been really increasing, right? I mean, nowadays you see hoardings at bus stops saying that about blockchain startups, yeah, the whole quirky messaging and everything. But having said that, also another area that we miss talking about is the whole decentralized finance or DeFi, right? India has been a country whose startup ecosystem has been really strong on lending and fintech products, right? So I think with the entire decentralized finance setting in, with the RBI setting in the guidelines and regulations, I think that will just fuel up the second growth phase for the startups in India.
Yeah, for sure. I think last mile access for finance, right, is going to require DeFi, and even though we're pretty mature in the sense that our settlements are almost instantaneous. So, I mean, if not like, on a daily basis, compared to US where it takes, multiple days for all these settlements at the back end. I think DeFi could actually still further accelerate, access to finance, right? I mean, so yeah, I mean, there are just a ton of use cases even within finance itself. Look at stuff like claims and underwriting
Right.
and stuff, right? I mean, all of this can absolutely exist on the blockchain. The fact that there's the digital identity is leveraged by multiple companies for multiple products and services. Again, these are things that can absolutely exist on chain. And yeah, I mean, I just see infinite potential for blockchain in India, really.
Yeah, and we also couple of rounders back, we spoke about Chingari getting funded in crypto tokens, right? And they were setting up the whole e-commerce front on crypto. So yeah, I mean a lot of interesting use cases, and interesting to see how these would pan out.
Yeah.
But moving on, I mean, it's very surprising to see how much technology has come, right, in the past few years. I mean, today there are technologies available that can actually create a person's digital twin to replicate not only their physical traits, but also their inner qualities such as personality, emotions, thoughts, and skills to deliver predictive information. Just a couple of days back, I was seeing this documentary on YouTube Originals called How Far Is Too Far, where Will.i.am actually has created a virtual identity for himself so that he can have multiple concerts around the globe. Mhm. And
So
likewise,
on that note, I mean, there's a very interesting thing. I don't know. I mean, if you will recollect ABBA, a band from the 60s and
yeah.
70s, probably very very popular with our parents' generation. Right? They had,
No, I mean, I listen to ABBA.
of course you do, Gunjan. Yeah, I mean, so they're coming back. They came back and they've released a couple of songs. If not, I think they've probably released a new album, and they're actually physically not going on tour. So they've created digital personas, and their digital personas will be performing in front of people. So people are actually going to pay to go to a place to watch a digital concert, which I thought was amazing. I mean,
Yeah,
really.
it's
So
already
these things,
happening.
yeah, these things are happening, man. These things are happening.
Yep. I mean, I know the gaming industry is the entire media and entertainment plus the sports industry combined, right? So it's only a matter of time, and especially with Zuckerberg's whole metaverse theory, right? Just a matter
Mm,
of time that virtual reality will become the reality for us. And on that
sure.
note, Genesis International which is a pioneer in advanced mapping, content, and solutions. They launched its Pan India program to make the digital twin of 100 Indian cities. This launch program was inaugurated by Mr. Amitabh Kant, who is the CEO of Niti Aayog, Government of India. The first time creation of this very accurate 3D data will mean a host of applications would open up in high definition mapping for smart cars, e commerce, logistics, gaming, utilities planning, and telecom, and even disaster management. The company has also introduced patented mapping technology built into AI and ML for 2,000 people for remote monitoring using a combination of aerial, mobile, and backpack sensors. Now, this is like a rabbit hole, right? I mean, you have your whole metaverse theory, you have your Minecraft theory, and imagine virtual cities which companies are using to actually map out, how to go out building maybe let's say telephone antennas or electrical lines or something. But let's take a step back. I think
It's too futuristic for my
it's
boomer
too
mind to
futuristic.
comprehend, actually.
No, exactly. I mean, this will require some work. But most recently, Map My India IPO went live, right? And I think its retail section was subscribed over 2x. And you have spoken with Mr. Rakesh Verma before, right? So, what do you make of this space going ahead?
No, this is, Map My India is one of those inspirational stories. We've spoken about this on the podcast earlier, and I've talked to Mr. Rakesh Verma as well. Leaving what was a high flying career in the US, returning to India to build a product company, right? And not just a product company, which was in itself a bold decision, but also to focus on maps, right? I mean, who even thought of all of these digital maps in the 90s, And then, going up against Google, uh, I mean, it's Google and Apple, I should add, right?
Right.
And I mean, it's just an incredible journey of over 3 decades. Multiply, which is a social network for investors, had an amazing thread, and I want to call out a few things from that thread, right? In this roundup. So one, MapMy India made a very wise choice to focus on the enterprise segment, right? And they didn't really compete with Google on the B2C side of things. And they mapped over 98% of India's road network, 10.5 million locations at the street level across 7.5 lakh plus cities and villages. And they've been able to garner clients, like in the auto sector primarily, right? And they've got some government work as well. And I think in the last 1 or 2 years, they've seen a lot of regulatory tailwinds. There's been a lot of policy changes that have been like very, very supportive for everything that they're doing, right? I mean, including their partnership with ISRO, the new drone policy 2021 that was
Right.
launched, the launch of the Indian Space Association, Gati Shakti, etc. Now, all of these are like tailwinds that they're riding, and they're a very nicely profitable company as well. I think they're doing about 125 crores in revenue, 50 crore EBITDA, and this IPO is basically, I mean, I think to give an exit to Zenrin and Qualcomm, which are their investors. Incidentally, PhonePe had invested them in them. I think it was in 2016 or 17, and owns about 36% of MapMy India. The promoters still own about 31%. So this is a fantastic business, I mean, and I'm really looking forward to the next 10, 20 years of MapMy India, because I think it defines Atmanirbhar Bharat to me, right?
Right.
Building indigenous technology and being self-sufficient and stuff. So yeah, fantastic stuff. All the best to the team.
Right. And also talking about the whole MapMind, you're focusing on the whole enterprise side, right? You're seeing companies like Pixel that are with partnerships with ISRO, of course, they're launching satellites into low Earth orbit, supplying, high quality data to companies, and they're actually buying them. So interesting to see the demand going up in this space. But let's move on. We have seen a lot of activity going on in the EV space in India as well. I think the highlight of it was the partnership agreement that was signed between Mahindra and Jio BP. Mahindra Group is now partnering with Jio, which is a Jio BP, which is a joint venture of Reliance Industries and BP PLC, to explore the creation of products and services for strengthening the conglomerate's electric vehicle push. Under this non-binding deal, the company will evaluate Jio's charging and battery swapping technologies for its electric three and four-wheelers, as well as quadricycles and small commercial vehicles. The partnership will also explore business models such as mobility as a service and battery as a service to help speed up EV adoption in the country. Now, that is key, right, to accelerate EV adoption in the country,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
No,
And for
absolutely. I mean, I think, we've made the point earlier that a whole ecosystem has to be built for, the endpoint innovation, right? I mean, vehicles are the endpoint, basically. Now, charging infrastructure, battery infrastructure, all of these things matter a great deal. I mean, we're going to talk about Ultraviolet's fundraise. And one of the things about Ultraviolet is that they've built almost everything in a full stack fashion, right from the battery to the stand to the chassis to everything, right? And that kind of effort and what is the time, cost, and money, right? I mean, it has to come down as we get mature as an ecosystem, and stuff like this, investments around infrastructure is certainly going to bring the cost of innovation down, I feel. So yeah, I mean, this is amazing, and the fact that something like Mahindra and Reliance and all of these folks are stepping in.
yeah,
uh,
they were earlier just as investors into EV tech companies,
yeah,
right? And now they're
yeah,
actually exploring partnerships to
yeah,
further the ecosystem.
yeah,
And also, if you look at the fundraisers that happened in this space, right? Ultraviolet is pioneering and creating, sexy sports bike which run on battery. Exponent Energy is actually developing new technologies to simplify the whole drivetrain and make it more efficient. And Charge Plus Zone is setting up the battery and charging infrastructure around the country, right?
yeah.
Um,
And then we had Bounce Infinity as well launch a couple of
Correct.
weeks back, right? So yeah, I mean, you're going to cover the whole spectrum, I'll tell you. And I think we should also mention Ola, which raised, I don't know, probably about 50, 60 million from
139.
Temasek. Sorry?
There is $139 million dollars last week. I think
No,
with the
that was for
EBITDA of
Ola. I think Ola Electric also raised a bunch of cash recently. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of activity in the space, and there's a lot of hype surrounding this as well. So yeah.
even the government is pushing a lot of innovation, right? I mean, in the
Mm.
last roundup, we discussed about the FAME 2 subsidies, right? Making this more affordable for the masses. So yeah, I think we'll see rapid adoption in this. Next up, this has been a topic which we really haven't spoken about in a while. There has been two major acquisitions in the edtech space. Byju's has acquired Austria-based learning platform GeoGebra. This deal marks the EdTech Decacorn's 10th acquisition this year. And according to an official statement, GeoGebra's dynamic, interactive, and collaborative mathematics learning tool has over 115 million students on its platform. The acquisition is also in line with Baiju's ambitions to expand to overseas geographies after a series of fundraisers from investors. They even appointed former Bain and Company partner Rachna Bahadur as the senior VP to lead its global expansion plans. In this role, Rachna will lead the overall planning, strategy, and roadmap for Baiju's expansions into new and existing markets. Even Upgrad has entered into an exclusive agreement to acquire Talent Edge, and this deal is pegged at a size of between rupees 400 to 500 crore. This would be also be one of the largest consolidations in the Indian higher education space, in which Upgrad, which is the number one player in the space, is acquiring the number four player. Talented is slated to do a revenue of over rupees 130 crore this year and double its revenue in the coming year. And it has partnered with top Indian and international institutions such as IIMs, XLRI, eCornell, UCLA, among others, and has over 5 lakhs individual and corporate learners. Now, mergers and acquisitions really do help startups do away with the long sales cycles, right? Instead of taking months to develop and deploy a new product, bigger players would rather acquire an existing company with a solid product market fit and just scale it up. But this kind of also makes it difficult for early stage companies, right? They're not actually seeing the whole growth phase and also kind of creating an atmosphere of an oligopoly. What do you make
See,
of it?
it's an interesting point that you make, but it all depends on the entrepreneur's aspirations, right? And also, I mean, the kind of investors that they have, in their cap table, right? I think anytime we talk about Byju's, you should just drop the DJ Khaled meme, right? Another one. I mean, 10 acquisitions in about what 11 months, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's
this is
pretty
12 months.
remarkable, really. I don't think people can even launch products as fast, right? As fast as Byju's can acquire. But we've covered this a fair bit, right? I mean, that there's massive consolidation happening on demand and supply. This one seems more for the tech part of things, right? I mean, GeoGebra seems to have some proprietary learning technology, right? Interactive technology and stuff. They had already spent, I think, $2 billion or so on acquisitions, and all of this just adds inorganically to the top line. So yeah, I mean, the TAM is huge, and there's domestic, international markets to cover. So edtech as a whole, I mean, there's just so much of growth opportunity that, I mean, any amount of money seems justified at this point of time. But to me, I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know how another acquisition really helps, at this point, because
I think they have acquired companies of all different types, right? Right from
yeah,
K-12
exactly.
to
Yeah,
services,
yeah.
competitive exams. All right, let's talk about the other major fundraisers that happened this week, right? And I think it would be a sin to not talk about a new unicorn in the ecosystem. This week's unicorn is Pristine Care that attained the unicorn status after raising $100 million round at a $1.4 billion valuation. The Series E round was led by Sequoia Capital US, with participation from Tiger Global, Hummingbird Opportunity Fund, and Winter Capital. In its last known funding round, the company was valued at $550 million when it had raised $53 million round, which was led by Tiger Global in April 2021. And also, according to a report which NASSCOM published, India has added the second most number of unicorns only after the US this quarter. Right, so I mean that is a remarkable achievement. MoEngage also has raised a $30 million round just 4 months after closing its previous funding. Steadview Capital led the seven-year-old the SaaS startup Series D round, and existing investors also participated in the round, which takes the all-time raise to about $100 million. We spoke about this briefly earlier, but Ola has also raised about $139 million from Edelweiss and IIFL Holdings at a valuation of $7 billion. Meanwhile, the company is also in discussions to raise a pre-IPO round of over $1 billion at a valuation of 7.5 billion. Last but not the least, E-commerce shipping platform ShipRocket led the funding charts this week with a whopping $185 million Series E funding round, which was co-led by Zomato, Temasek, and Lightrock India. More strategic ventures and nine unicorns came in as new investors, while existing investors InfoEdge Ventures and March Capital participated. Now, this transaction marks ShipRocket's third round of funding in 2021, which would bring its total funding to $280 million. Right? I mean, large check size, crunched up timelines between fundraisers. So, Roshan, what stands out from here? Is it the large check sizes or is it the time between consecutive fundraisers? What's your thought?
Well, all of the above, I should say, right? So I think with Pristine entering the unicorn club, we have three unicorns in healthcare now. CureFit as well joined Pharmacy, right? So we have three unicorns in healthcare, and Pristine is an interesting business. It's a hospital without a building or a hospital on the cloud, right? It depends which way you look at it. They have doctors on their roles, and they're leasing OT equipment from different hospitals and clinics across India, right? So it's a pretty interesting business. MoEngage is doing really well, right? I mean, mobility engagement, customer engagement is picking up big time, right? And we've seen SaaS itself grow pretty rapidly, right? I mean, growing at a CAGR of around 20% every year. And the US journey has been going really well as well. So, yeah, I mean, not surprised that they've raised a round now when SaaS is so hot. Incidentally, we're just about seeing a bit of a correction in terms of the public SaaS companies in the US, right? I mean, DocuSign had a nightmare. I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks where their stock fell about 30% of more than that, 40%, I think, right? And Freshworks stock is down as well, and so on. So probably the right time to kind of pick this up at this point of time itself, when when the liquidity is still there in the market and people are fairly optimistic. Well, with Ola, I think there's been more bad news than good news, right? We keep hearing all kinds of things, about the culture and about people leaving and so on and so forth. But Ola is one of those legendary companies, and I'm really rooting for them to succeed. Obviously, ride hailing has not had a good 2 years, whether it's Uber or Ola. I think Uber has pretty much sidelined India, I should say, right, in
Yeah.
in some sense. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough business, man. I mean, it's a very physical business, so no wonder that with all of these lockdowns and everything, they suffered a great deal. So yeah, I mean, this seems like a pre-IPO sort of a fundraise, right? And let's hope that they're able to pull through. There was also some controversy about Zomato investing in Shiprocket, right? And people have like different opinions on this, on how a public company can raise a fund of its own and invest in startups, and
No, I
there's
think,
some kind of.
yeah, I think that was because Dipinder had owned shares of ShipRocket, but I think
But that was
after
negligible, I think, and he yeah, he put out a clarification also that
he sold
he
those
exited the
shares,
company and
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
he
yeah.
sold those shares after its fundraise, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there seems to be some kind of controversy on that, but yeah, yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So moving on, right? Rahul Mathur, who we had hosted in the podcast earlier, he put out a really interesting tweet, right, which was the Doge meme, and one day after the fundraise, where the meme is all buff, and then the second picture of the meme where it's all skinny and like basically whimpering and saying, "Sir, please buy your premium plan." Now, with the whole liquidity in the market, right, it really becomes difficult for startups, right? I mean, while it's great to have that much of cash in the bank, scaling your teams that rapidly, meeting your sales targets, developing the entire culture when like hundreds of people are joining at the same time, it must be tough for founders, right? Scaling at that pace.
It's tough, but it's a much better problem to solve than not having liquidity, right? I mean, so I've had Raghu of Zolve on the podcast. I had Avlesh of WebEngage, who we'll talk about shortly. And both of these are experienced entrepreneurs. Raghu had built Taxi for Sure earlier, right? Avlesh has been a SaaS entrepreneur for almost 10, 11 years now, right, with WebEngage. And both of these folks belong to an era where there wasn't this much cash, right, in the ecosystem. And I had the same question to both of them, right, which is that, guys, I mean, considering that there is so much of cash in the market right now, how does it how do you see the impact of it? And one of the things is that obviously you will fund a lot more experiments and stuff. But they were both very empathetic to founders, right? That I mean, if the cash is available, you should probably take it, right? That's always the case, but at the end of the day, you have to build a sustainable business, because money solves money problems, right? So capital is great at accelerating product market fit, but capital can't get you to product market fit.
Right.
And so as a founder, you have to be really, really cognizant of that. Right. And so yeah, I mean, this is fair. I feel it's a little bit harsh, but it's okay.
I mean, yeah, I mean, there's this saying, right? You'll never see a man sad in a Ferrari or something like that. Sorry, you'll never see a man sad in a Ferrari. Like, money can't solve all your problems, but you'll never see a man. It's better to cry in a Ferrari than in any other car. So I think,
Money can solve money problems, basically.
yeah. Cool. So I think with that, Roshan, we come towards the end of the roundup. I think you've spoken with Avlesh and Sumit. Some insights into that.
Yeah, both were really good conversations. So Avlesh is a veteran SaaS entrepreneur, and B2B SaaS in 2010, 2011 was not in the least sexy, right? Like how it is today, and he's built an amazing business. They've pivoted two or three times, and today they're a consumer marketing cloud. And he spoke about this interesting phenomena where emerging markets are actually acquiring a lot of SaaS software, right? I mean, so the larger enterprises in Asia are actually opening up to SaaS, which is again pretty interesting, right? Because we always think that I mean, you have to sell to the US, and that's where all the big bucks are. But he's also seeing this trend of Asia opening up and large enterprises buying SaaS here. We spoke about web engage journey. We spoke about how entrepreneurs today are building SaaS businesses, and they also have this web engage for startups program where they partner with startups and help them with their growth and stuff, which is pretty interesting, I should say. And it's a sign of a mature ecosystem as well. So wonderful chat, and do check out the podcast for sure, right? Sumit, I've been trying to talk to him for a while, Sumit of Dukan, and they're doing 2 million plus sales without a sales team, which is pretty
Wow.
fantastic, I should say, right? And so Dukan is a storefront for anyone from your grocery to your, like a drop shipping business to anything, right? And I was really curious about how they serve all of these various different use cases and multiple personas with one product, right? I mean, it's really something, because somebody may be putting things in grams, somebody may be putting things in miles or kilometers, and someone may be doing numbers, right? And so on and so forth. So really productizing a storefront for all of these different scenarios is something else, right? And so I had a great chat with Sumit as well. So two wonderful episodes coming up this week.
Right. Well, before we started this rounder, we thought that this would be a very short chat, but I mean, it really hasn't been, right? Every week we kind of overshoot our time, and it's a lot of interesting topics that we're learning ourselves and we're able to put out. Folks, if there's any specific topic that you want us to cover in more detail, do let us know through our social handles, which is the Startup Operator on LinkedIn and at Operator Startup on Twitter. We also have an active WhatsApp group where we send in daily segments from our episodes. We have daily discussions. And of course, we're also able to interact with you and take your suggestions and hear from your side. But yeah, don't forget to subscribe to the Startup Operator YouTube channel as well as subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform so that you don't miss any update. But until then, Roshan and I will see you again next week. Take care. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.